This is the Today with Tally podcast. I'm here in Houston, Texas, and I will never forget the 4th of July, 2025. It rained like you have no idea. Kerr County ended up having one of the most devastating floods in the history of Texas. It would claim the lives of over 130 people. And unfortunately, this storm was centered over a camp for kids. And it just blew in there and it devastated the community. We're going to be joined by Jeremy Locke. Now, he is the co-founder of Aerial Recovery, and he and his wife, Brittany, came out along with their team, boots on the ground, to help assist in the search, rescue, and recovery efforts here in Kerr County and everything down south of the Guadalupe River. Jeremy Locke spent 20 years in the U.S. Army and retired Special Forces operator. And with that, we're honored to be joined by Jeremy Locke. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me on, Tyler.
Yes, sir, man. Hey, look, I got to commend you and your team for coming out. I know you're based outside of Texas, and you saw this disaster happen, and you guys got here fairly quickly, huh?
Yeah, we watched it. You know, initially my team, when we go in, we do a lot of the search and rescue, and with a flood situation like that, we'll do swift water rescue and all of that. And it being in Texas and us being in Nashville, Tennessee at the time, we kind of figured that portion would be over, and we weren't initially looking to respond to this one. But as the reports started coming in and just seeing the utter devastation that was caused by this flooding. I mean, where we were operating out of in Kerr County in Hunt, Texas, the river there is normally about 13 feet deep, and this thing went up to 33 feet deep in a little over 35 minutes. So completely obliterated most of the shorelines there, houses, unfortunately the camp that you spoke of there. And it's something I haven't really seen before, flooding of a single river like that. And I've been doing this for quite a while now.
Yeah. Aerial recovery. I mean, you guys have missions all over the world.
Yeah.
And saying, words like that in a statement that says, man, I don't think I've ever really seen anything like that, does speak to the nature of what we saw here in Texas.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible, and they call them perfect storms sometimes, but for that, just the conditions to happen, and then when it happened over a holiday weekend and the time of day, which was very early in the morning, it gave people little or no opportunity to get out of harm's way, and that water, if you've ever seen fast moving water in volume, it is one of the most destructive forces there is on this planet. And when you see hurricanes and all of that, it's not the wind that really messes things up. It's the storm surge. It's the water. So it's just powerful. And when it's moving like that, there's really nothing you can do.
Yeah, I mean, 26 feet in 45 minutes. And like you said, it would go up to 30. I think it actually crested at 40 feet in some areas here. So there's really no preventative way to have done anything. I mean, this is just a horrifying catastrophe, Mother Nature, and there's no way to stop it. So I mean, all we can do and hope and pray for is folks like you that come in, put boots on the ground, and help assist with these rescues. Now, you coming out of Nashville, how quickly were you here responding to this flood?
So my team got on the ground there. I let them out, and we arrived the fourth night after the disaster. So all of the search and rescue portion was over with at that time, and the recovery efforts had begun. And it was, as you spoke earlier, over 130 people unfortunately lost their lives out there. And some of these, these remains, and they're found miles and miles downstream, and the water level broke over the banks, and in some places, it's 50 feet up the bank. In different areas, there's debris, and unfortunately, people that were found in trees 25 feet up in the air. It was not like anything I'd really seen before, and just completely overwhelming, because it was it was stretches of the river over about 100 miles. So this water, it collected upstream, and it just hit so much volume in an already oversaturated area with an area that's prone to flooding already. And when that comes down like that, it was basically a tidal wave that came down a river that people normally inner tube down. And that's why there are all these little kids camps and stuff are there. It's a picturesque place. I'd never been to Texas Hill Country before. And with all these beautiful cedar trees that are normally overshading this slow moving river. And that wasn't the case. It was a nightmare scenario for those out there.
You had said, hey, look, this is over 100-mile stretch here, that this covered. How do you coordinate this with other agencies that are on the ground? You're coming in with your guys, and then, everybody else is coming in with their own folks. Plus you have the locals there, plus Texas Equisearch and the Cajun Navy and everybody else like this. How do you guys coordinate these efforts without stepping on each other's feet?
Yeah, and at one point I heard it's just statistic, which is a testament to the response and the resilience of Texas, by the way. But over 12,000 volunteers were down there at one point, and that's a lot of people showing up. And while there's some people with some great skill sets, a lot of times there's people down there too that unfortunately get in the way. They have big hearts, but there's some serious work that needs to get done. But fortunately, my organization, Aerial Recovery, has a very good track record, and we actually connected with some people that came out to Hurricane Helene when we were serving out there in North Carolina, and they were from that area. So they reached out to us and said, hey, that was one of the triggering points for us to deploy too, was like, you guys got to get out here. Here's where we're linked up. And then we started making phone calls to the EOCs and connecting with the authorities and letting know that we're coming down. Here's our capabilities. Here's our certifications. Where do you need us? What do you guys need? And at that time, it really was kind of command and control and coordination of the efforts that were going on there, providing mapping, assisting with drone operations, and really just marking and tagging areas that had been searched, because it's a very, very slow process. And because you're not just with that much power, buildings, entire trees, vehicles going down this river, and a human being being involved in that, it's basically a blender for a person inside of there. So, you're not just looking for intact people. A lot of times you're looking for pieces of people as well. And that's why those dog teams are super important down there too, helping identify human remains.
Look, I know you spent 20 years in the U.S. Army, and you've done humanitarian missions all over the world. And what's the emotional toll? Like you just said, hey, we're not looking for bodies, we're looking for parts and pieces. Like, how does that play on your psyche to go ahead and to put yourself into the middle of this? I mean, that's got to be very traumatic, especially when you're dealing with kids.
Yeah, it's something that you do try to prepare for, and we're very cognizant of this at Aerial Recovery. One of our main pillars of our program is called the Heal the Heroes program, and the main effort that we deploy out are veterans of the military and first responder community that do struggle with depression, anxiety, addiction. They have PTSD, and what we're really trying to do is provide them opportunities to get purpose back and not pills. And we have a year-long healing program that these heroes go through, and then they go out and deploy with us. And I'm affectionately known as hero number one. And I have I have my own story, as we all do. And I'm a suicide survivor myself, and recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for about 5 years now. And so these types of things, they do chip away at you, but you have to build that resiliency. And coming from an environment when I was in the military and then in the special forces and the infantry prior to that, mental health and all of that was an afterthought. It was something that you were almost ridiculed for, and taking a knee on your team if you speak up, if you have issues. But we really recognize that at Aerial Recovery. We have our own resiliency programs. We have everything in place for our heroes, for psychologists, different avenues of healing that they can go down. And we're very cognizant of that, because it is very difficult to see that, especially when it comes to children. So we don't want to re-traumatize our people that are going out there. And then the first responders and those that are on the ground that are going through it. I mean, it's more impactful for them, because this is their family members, this is their community, their neighbors. And then they're also expected to be professionals and do their job, but they have just had something very terrible happen to themselves. And in many cases, people that they know very intimately have either been injured or lost their lives.
Now, you said that you're a recovering alcoholic. Was that through the traumas of the military, or is this just because you like the taste of it and it ended up, bringing you into areas that you really didn't want to be in, and you figured out that, hey, look, I have a problem here. I need to get this stopped. Like, how'd that all happen?
Yeah, I think initially I never really was a drinker. And when I got back from my first deployment to Iraq back in 2007, it was a 15-month deployment, pretty kinetic. And I got back and I really I had a lot of things in my personal life too that went wrong with a failed marriage and all this, bad things. And I kind of started drinking there. And I didn't really recognize I had a problem until 8, 9, 10 years later, when I'm trying to get in that process of getting out of the military and also trying to start up aerial recovery, and recognizing, as any good Green Beret will do, is like, if I have a mission, what's the enemy's most likely course of action, or the most dangerous course of action? What do I need to get rid of out of my life to be successful? What do I currently have? And I did recognize that alcohol was causing me problems. It was keeping me off mission. And then when I tried to stop drinking, those feelings and emotions and nightmares and all that stuff started coming back. So I really started putting things together. I'm drinking to cope with a lot of this stuff that I've never dealt with over a decade. And then, going all the way back to my childhood, as I've discovered in this healing journey that I've been on in the last 4 years or so. And I think it's, at the time, I just thought it was something that everybody was doing and it was real cool. But when I really took a step back and looked, I was drinking 6 nights a week. I had 3 separate friend groups in Nashville, Tennessee, because I didn't have a problem, because I never drank alone. But I had to find 3 different groups of friends because they didn't drink 6 nights a week, So when you actually take stock of what's going on, I recognize I had a problem, and that drinking almost ended my life. And I do know that if I do continue drinking, it will be the end of my life.
And that brings me back to what you do.
Mhm.
You don't got an easy job, and I know that you do this because it's something that God has called you to do. You've got an extreme passion for it. You put yourself in harm's way, and you see things that people will never see in 10, 15, 20 different lifetimes, but you put yourself in the fight. Now, again, how do you emotionally unpack these traumas that you constantly surround yourself with around the world, and here in even Texas in the United States, with these natural disasters and these tragedies?
Yeah. Well, I'm a firm believer that God has put a certain population, certain amount of individuals on this planet that are just born protectors, and they're here designed to stop evil. I really firmly believe that. And actually, when you do the research and understand that there is a window after a traumatic event, if you start discussing what went on and start processing, you can help avoid some of those traumas. And that's between 48, 72 hours afterwards. So when you start really get into the psychology of where you get these internal scars and these internal traumas, and then you put those stop gaps in there within our organization. I mean, we talk about things at the end of the night. What did we see? How did that make us feel? The F word that, no combat veteran wants to talk about, feelings, right? We actually encourage that, and we talk about it. We have mandatory times that you're allowed to be on a mission, and then you have to rotate out. You have to speak with our chaplain. You have to speak with the psychologist. We put these things in place to just let people know, like, you can't go out and serve people to escape your own traumas or your responsibilities at home. You've got to take care of yourself and your family first. Be a hero at home is what we're always saying. And then go out and help your community and the rest of the world. So that's really what we put forward to our responders that are aerial recovery. And then we try to pass that on to those that we serve with, whether it be volunteers or first responders, as we did in Texas. And, just listen to some of those stories out there. It was, there will be some people that will be struggling for a long time of what they saw. And it's very unfortunate.
Indeed, the 4th of July will never be the same again in the state of Texas, especially out there in the Texas Hill Country. That's going to be, something that is a moment of reflection and a moment of our nation's history to go out and to celebrate the independence of this country is now going to be overshadowed by this traumatic loss of life and, the town of, in the county, of where this all happened. Were there some similarities between Helene and what you saw out in Kerr County?
Yeah, definitely. Helene was a different sort of hurricane. I remember when that thing first made landfall in Florida. I was actually hunkered down inside of a concrete parking structure, and it went over the top of us. And that's usually what we do is we'll do that, and then we'll pop out immediately after and go start helping people. But as we started following and tracking this thing, it was different because it got more devastating as it moved inland, which is normally not the case with hurricanes. And what you really saw in eastern Tennessee and western North Carolina was just an oversaturation of rain, very heavy rainfall up in on the high ground in these hills and in these mountains, and that accumulated and went down and just swelled up these tributaries and rivers, and that's really what caused a ton of that devastation out there, and dams to almost breach and all of that. And that's essentially what happened, more focused just on the Guadalupe in Texas, was just a large storm system that went upstream, went up to high ground and just dumped an unbelievable amount of water that came down and just rushed down and just really just swamped some people out there and like they'd never seen before.
And the reason why I was asking is because, I'm sitting here watching this stuff on TV, and I remember Helene and, of course, the Texas floods here. And the one in North Carolina seemed less organized than the efforts I saw out here in Texas. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I will commend the responders in Texas, and I did see it coming 4 days in later, but it was very organized, and they were very receptive to volunteers and people coming in and assisting. In North Carolina, I mean, that thing, for some reason, it was super political. There was even a time that we were out serving in Batcave, and we have all of our stuff ready to go, and just someone didn't like the cut of our jib because we are going to go do something that made a lot of sense, and they tried to kick us off site, and it's just ridiculous. So we had to do a whole political call people that we know to get back in there, and I heard many stories of that, and helicopters getting turned around and all sorts of stuff. And really, I just think it was such a broad disaster. The amount of area that storm covered, multiple states, multiple counties. I mean, no one is prepared for that. And I just think that, unfortunately, some of these times some egos get involved, politics get involved, and there's no time for any of that when our nation is encountering a disaster. We just have to have that mentality that we need to come together. We need to work together. This is the United States of America. These are Americans helping Americans. And let's figure out how we can get this done and just help the people most efficiently and put our freaking egos aside. And I saw that a lot more in North Carolina. And I really do commend everybody in Texas. It was a lot smoother from what I noticed.
Now, did you see a lot of National Guard troops on the ground in both of these states?
Yes, I did see National Guard troops in Texas, and I did see them in Florida and North Carolina as well. But I want to say there was a lot more volunteers that were out there, but I did see them in North Carolina. I mean, there were so many people cut off that helicopters were like a must at that point. It was pretty incredible how much of the infrastructure was destroyed, the roads into places, the amount of people trapped on mountains and hilltops, the lack of communication. One of the good things that happened in Texas that we had going for us is, it's one river going down. So the communication systems weren't really messed up. With Hurricane Helene, it was probably more disorganized because a lot of those cell towers went down. A lot of the phones weren't working. So if you didn't have a Starlink, you were kind of out of luck out there. And everybody's talking on different radios. I mean, it's why in the military we rehearse, right? Like you got to rehearse these things, but you don't really rehearse for what's the equivalent almost of a nuclear attack on the southeastern seaboard, right? It was pretty incredible seeing that happen there.
Yeah, you can't war game that. You know what I mean?
No,
You just got to
no,
go out
no.
there and, like with your skill set, when you respond to these tragedies, who delegates all this authority to say, okay, you're going to go here, you're going to go here, and what type of responsibilities do they typically put on your back?
It's of course, the worst answer I can give you is it kind of depends, but usually we all well, I'm going to say we always check in with the emergency operations center. We give them the information on who we are, what we do, our background, our certifications, our qualifications. When you initially have a storm where we're set up, let's say in Florida, we work with the Florida State Guard Special Missions Unit when we're out there. So we're maneuvering around and just helping people immediately. But once it gets to a victim, as soon as we get them out of harm's way, we immediately get them to emergency services. Right? We just like immediate loss of life, like they're gonna die if we don't do something. We'll help them out of that situation. And our next thing is to get them to an authority figure around there because we aren't the official authority figures. We're just there to help. And a lot of ways that we do is we just come along side some of these because you're looking at like small volunteer fire departments or in some of these little towns their emergency operations manager might be someone who doesn't really have any experience in it because their town's 700 people. So we can come in with that expertise, and we're comprised not just of military but also of first responders that are firemen, wildfire fighters, like all these people that have EMS, police officers. They've done this stuff before professionally, so we can come in with the technical, the tactical capabilities, as well as giving them different equipment that they may not have, extra radios, Starlinks, all this different stuff that will help improve what they're doing. We're really there to just bolster the response of the local, state, and federal authorities. That's what we want to do, is just help them out and just fill those gaps in between.
You bring up a good point there. When you're out there working, if you see something that's critical, you want to patch them directly to the authorities there. But what is the protocol when you're in a riverbed, marching south, and you're going over houses and wood and cars and, all the debris you can think of, and you come across remains? What's the protocol once you encounter the remains, and where do you go from there?
Yeah, from there. So we've already talked to the authorities, and we've kind of established the way that they want that chain of custody for the remains to handle. So once we've identified the remains, same as if it's someone that's still alive and maybe injured, we make sure that it's in a place that won't be disturbed. There's not more water coming to threaten it. There's not the middle of a roadway or something like that where it has to be moved, because you got to remember there are bad actors out there, right? And that's one thing we do with our anti-trafficking too, is there's a lot of people they're in very vulnerable situations, but these are almost become crime scenes, right? So once you identify it, you mark it, we call it up, and then we get the authorities to come down. We won't touch it or move it. And then we kind of block off the area, because to go back to the point of not causing more trauma that you need to, if you find a dead body, like, you don't need 10 people standing around looking at the dead body. It's just unnecessary trauma for someone that does not need to go look at that body, right? So we'll cordon off that area, and then we'll have the authorities come down and take a look at it. And then as you start getting into this thing, a few days in and a week in and 2 weeks in, while you're still looking for remains, if you have someone that is a bad actor and is looking to get rid of a body, I mean, that's a prime time to go drop a body off down there and say this was a victim of a flood. So there still needs to be an investigation that happens, which is why you can't just go in and, like a cowboy, and just start moving things around. Like, you've got to go through the right protocols, which is what's handed down from the EOCs there usually.
Wow, that's incredible. I never thought about that. That's You're spot on there. Somebody's got some, a murder scene down the road, and they're like, well, I'm going to go in here and volunteer, and I'm going to dump this body over here, and I'm going to get rid of these remains, and my hands are clean of this. I'm going to do an about face and find my way out of here.
Yeah, exactly. That's the stuff you have to think about.
Incredible. I commend you and your team and your wife Brittany with aerial recovery. I can't imagine what you guys one went through, what you saw, and what that experience was like. And it, was there a specific moment that stood out to you most when you were in Texas working these floods?
I think to me it was the stories that I heard, especially of those that were there and the first responders that were there the night of or the morning of the fourth when the water really started rising and coming down. Talking to them, and I remember speaking to one of the police officers that was out there, and he was telling me that he was on shift during the floods, and he got the call and he went to the Camp Mystic, and was there. And it's, dark and rainy and loud with the water coming through. And he's trying to respond to these calls for help. And he gets out there with his flashlight, and he's shining his flashlight over into the river. And the river is just completely swollen. And he's seeing the cabins, and he's literally watching these young kids climb up on top of the cabins to get out and away from this water. And then seeing another cabin dislodge and smash into that one, and then all of them go down the river, and he's completely helpless, maybe 20, 30 feet away from them, but there's nothing he can do because there's this raging water between them. So that's why we do have that Heal the Heroes program, because imagine the trauma of this officer. And there's many stories that way, and there are some positive stories about, some miracles that got people out of harm's way, but you really can't unsee that. And that's why we have the Heal the Heroes program. That's why we're offering the Heal the Heroes program to those that were affected by the floods in Texas. And for those first responders, volunteers that have the military background and do need healing from that or any prior experiences, because this is going to be a traumatic event that didn't just happen July 4th, 2025. This is something that's going to be affecting people and families in that community for decades to come.
Indeed. Yeah. And you guys displayed tremendous, courage and heroism out there in Texas. And so, me being from Houston, we do sincerely appreciate everything that you guys have done coming in here to Texas to help improve, the search, the rescue, and the recovery missions.
Unfortunately, there's still two that are missing, which is definitely had a toll on myself and a lot of my team. And I do really absolutely want to commend the Hunt Volunteer Fire Department, all the Texas Rangers are out there, the Kerr County EOC, the volunteers that were on the ground. Those guys and gals, they were putting the work in. Those heavy machine operators, Navy SEAL divers that were coming in, everybody that came in and volunteered for this one. Man, they were absolutely amazing. And it was an honor for us to support them. They were the ones out there just really doing that hard work in really extreme heat and temperatures. And there's some amazing unsung heroes that go out there. I remember this group from Lone Star Wellness, this wonderful woman named Fallon and her friend. She came out and they must have given out over 1,000 IVs, just going down there and just helping people stay hydrated to get back out and continue with the recovery efforts. So I really want to commend them as well.
Yeah, and the food, all the Texas barbecue, and you had so many restaurants, and even a lot of these small businesses were just cooking and delivering meals, for you guys out there. So again, that all hands on deck, and whatever your skill set is, you can give something. Whether it's searching, swimming, recovering, cooking, IVs, medical. Everybody has something to give and to donate, and service, right? It's giving back to the community. It's working for the good of the country, and it's bringing together people that have been through the worst day of their life and the worst days of their life, and the healing this will be something again that will continue on for generations to come here in the great state of Texas.
Absolutely. There's nothing too little that you can give to people that have been affected to something like that. So don't ever discredit yourself for whatever your skill set is. There's always a way. And a lot of what people really need is normalcy, right?
Yeah.
So even coming in, there was a group that was doing haircuts for people. There were chiropractors out there. All these things that are just keeping people going and just trying to bring them back to normal. I mean, that's what really, really helps. So thanks again to everybody that came out.
This is the Today with Tally podcast.